Go fast in the interest of time. I think that's the most important thing. Thank you for having me and everybody. And most importantly, thanks to Sales Hacker and Sales Screen for really bringing this forward. Like, this is a really important topic. It's near and dear to my heart. Yes, I'm a sales trainer. Yes, I have my own business. Yes, I have surf and sales. But I'm very big on mental health in sales, and have done some surveys and talked about my own experiences. I dropped my LinkedIn in the chat. Feel free, if you want to do that, try to connect with people per Savannah. This is a safe space. It's kind of one of those things where, what you say, what you hear when you leave it here, right? Respect everybody's personal privacy. We want to have conversations. We want to engage. If you've got a question that you're not comfortable, that you'd like to anonymize, please send it to me or Savannah directly. We won't mention your name, and just say, hey, can you keep this anonymous? Because we do want to answer these questions, because that's why everybody's here. Without any further ado, I first want to bring in Irina. I'm gonna let ladies go first. So Irina, if you would love to tell people who you are, where you're from, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm Irina Soriano, the Vice President of Enablement and Process Excellence at Seismic. I've been in sales early in my career, from BDR to AE, across different parts in EMEA. I led large sales teams of over 70 people in the Asia Pacific and in the US as well, and spend a big part of my career now in enablement, working closely with sales teams, and a topic that's very close to my heart as well. So I'm happy to be here today.
Great. Sam, we're going to go with you, and then Sandra, we're going to have you go last, since you're sort of the main guest, although Sam tries to steal it all the time. So that's his style. So Sam, you're on mute though.
I was just saying I like to steal the show. My name is Sam Nelson, SDR leader at Outreach. I spend a lot of my time working with other teams at this point in my career. And yeah, really excited to talk about this topic and be a part of this. I appreciate the invite.
Sandra, go ahead. And is it Sindra or Cinder? Like, I got thrown into this in the last second.
Sindra, for sure. Yeah, it's a mouthful. It's a Norwegian name. I'm actually out traveling right now, so I'm usually dialing in from Brooklyn, and it's a bit more fancy setup like Sam and you. But today I'm calling in from Norway, and I'm excited to be here. I'm the CEO and founder of Sales Screen. We're sponsoring this webinar. It's an important topic, which is near and dear to our hearts. Yeah. So yeah, let's dive in.
Let's dive in. I know, Savannah, you're going to run a couple of polls. And so we're going to run these for a couple of minutes. So folks, please go and do this. And we wanted to do the polls early so that the comments didn't actually jade anybody. That was sort of our goal. So with that being said, though, let's just throw it out there. Like, how do each of you see burnout? How do you even define it, whatever it is? And we'll talk about, well, what does it look like, but really, what does it feel like might be the best way to describe it. But I'll let the three of you sort of, jump in and decide who's going to go first.
Do you want to go, Irina?
Sure. As we're starting with the ladies here today, it seems. So I have a couple of thoughts on that. I think, clinically speaking, obviously, we're talking about a mental condition here, right? That is, can build up over time, right? I think there's various degrees to burnout. And I think anybody who would say right now they haven't suffered from any degree of it, as we were going through the last 2 years, I have. So, how I think generally it manifests and how I've seen it a lot with people is just when the good stress that sellers usually have starts to turn into the bad stress, right? It means you get up on Monday morning and you go, oh man, like I don't want to tackle this week, or you start to feel overwhelmed, or the calendar gets too full and you can't follow up anymore. And eventually it starts to lead to being less effective, having lesser performance, right? You might not be able to think as clearly before as you might have. I think brain fog is a big one. That it's kind of the trigger word that I heard from a lot of people in the last 2 years as well, that were either suffering from burnout or was stepping into that neighborhood, like just having the clarity to make good decisions, clear decisions, act quickly, and everything just seems like too much. That's how I have it seen come through in the last 2 years, and personally as well. As you know, I've been working from home and leading global teams and having worked with all the sellers. Like, I think we're all there, a bit in the same boat. Definitely something that was part of that experience too. Sam, what about you?
I think about it in a couple different ways. I think about it kind of the amount that I can work, where if I cross a certain point, I become less productive the next day. That's one way I think about it. And kind of figuring out what that is for me and where I need to be careful has been important for me. And then also just situations when you have a lot of work and a lot of stress at the same time can also lead to kind of less production and generally being unhappy. So I kind of think about it in those two different ways.
I think those are both great perspectives, and I think as an umbrella catch-all term, I think about it as just feeling out of steam. You don't have any more to give, and I do believe that there's various degrees to burnout. You know, you have the stage where you really hit the wall and you just don't have anything left to give, and you know, simple math like 50 divided by 2 becomes impossible. But I think that there's perhaps even a more important category, which is that stage just before you are totally burnt out, that many of us has either felt or been close to feeling. So it's bigger than I think that we lead on with. It's an important topic for sure. Richard, I know you've been really researching this as well, right?
Yeah, so there's a couple thoughts. So one, for me, burnout's a feeling, which I think everybody was alluding to, and it does go in varying degrees. And for me, the hard part that I've seen is that we can see burnout coming. We just choose not to. And that's okay. Like, I get it. Like, we're all humans. There's nobody perfect in the world. And somebody said, you know, if you've never, I think Arena, you said, if nobody's ever experienced it, they're kind of lying. Like, it's kind of like, give me a break. And so for me, it's always very important to just see where people are. And I think the biggest piece is the stigma around it, and particularly the stigma in sales, right? You're not supposed to talk about this stuff. And I'm so grateful for athletes, what's her name? Who was the gymnast this summer? Who pulled because she just was, she's the greatest gymnast in the world, and she just pulled herself because she just wasn't there. And I know there's a guy on the Cleveland Cavaliers who's done it, and I'm just so grateful that people are willing to say like this is normal, and these are people who care hardcore. I think that's a big piece. The biggest challenge, though, I've seen is the stigma. I did some research last year. We had about 700 people respond. So keep in mind, this data is from during COVID, and we're running a new survey this year, but it said last year, we ran this last January and February, during the last 6 months, you felt like there was a stigma in your workplace coming forward to talk about mental health, whether it was burnout or anything else. Did you feel like there was a stigma? 27% of the 700 said yes, there is a stigma. And that to me was a really, really big piece that I thought was concerning, that we still have this challenge. And I'm grateful to all of these organizations. I know Seismic does it. I know that Sindra, you do it. I definitely know that Outreach does it in terms of like supporting mental health. So that's one thing. I want to move forward though to as sales leaders, right? Why do you even care about burnout? Like, I'm 53, and it was like 2 days of product training, sit next to Sam, listen to what Sam does on the phone. Here's your list, you go for it. Here's the big book of objections, memorize it. There was no crying in baseball kind of stuff when I came along in sales. But as we've matured, what have y'all learned about caring about this stuff? What have you seen with the teams you work with and coached? And just to save time, we'll go backwards. So Sindra, you want to go ahead and go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously today there is a state of war of talent, and people have high expectations of growth, and we're trying to put our best foot forward. And perhaps in a way, we're setting ourselves up a bit for failure at times and creating a level of unwarranted stress. And, you know, we might not do it by intention, but if we do, and then this is one of the things that can happen. You can get to a stage where you actually feel you have nothing more steam left to give, and you feel burnt out. And what's going to happen then is, of course, that the performance is going to drop dramatically from pretty much one day to another. It could also be a sliding downhill scale over time, and hopefully someone notices and picks it up and brings you up before you kind of hit rock bottom. But the fact is that performance is the name of the game for most organizations, and if your employees aren't feeling their best, they're not going to be able to perform no matter what tool or whatever you do to try to help them. They need to be good with themselves and in a good state of mind in order to perform at work. So naturally, we have to care about it. Our number one asset and resources in any company is the people, and their well-being it's what's going to make them perform at work.
I'm going to have Sam and Irina, if you want to punch in on this real quick, go for it. Otherwise, we got 2 questions from the audience. I want to make sure we get to their stuff versus our stuff, but feel free to jump in.
Let's do the audience here real quick.
Okay.
Richard.
Great. So this is a great question. I love this. How do you know if the burnout is connected to being tired of selling the same thing over and over again, or is it something bigger? Anybody? It's a great question.
Interesting. Sam, you want to take that one first? I have a couple of thoughts there.
Well, I mean, certainly if you're in a job and you don't see how this ties into something that's more exciting than your current job, that can be a hard thing. And if the job just isn't for you, if you just don't like it, obviously that can be really hard as well. But I think that being able to attach what you're doing currently to something that you're excited about in the future is really important. Another thing that can cause issues is if you tie your self-worth to outcomes. That's something that's very easy to do as a sales rep. And it's just something you need to be aware that is going to happen naturally. That can be a really dangerous thing. It can make you irrationally upset when things don't go well, even if it's outside of your control, and irrationally annoying when things do go well. So being careful not to tie too much of your self-worth to short-term outcomes, I think is important.
Yeah, my thoughts on that is if you don't feel that you have a purpose with anything you do, but especially when you're in sales, if you're not connected to your product, if you don't stand behind that thing, if you think, well, I wouldn't buy it if that was me, you're in the wrong job. That's something different than burnout, right? That's you're just not selling what you're passionate about. Like, get out. That's my advice. Don't do it. Like, I wouldn't. I think for me, the burnout question is that goes a little bit bigger when we get to, hey, I've been giving this so much that now I've exhausted myself. I just spend, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. in front of the laptop, right? Which we've kind of all done in the last 2 years where we couldn't travel anymore. That's when the problems come in. When you put everything you got into your work, and you're not paying attention anymore to what do you do for self-care? Like, are you meditating? Do you go to the gym? Do you walk your dog? Do you get up and take a half-hour lunch break? And I'm the worst example for this because I sit for 14 hours a day in front of the laptop. And then I go, oops, it's 8 p.m. I haven't eaten anything today. So, there's also like a modeling behavior here. And that's one of my things I'm working on. So I think that's more what we're talking about. Like, if you're not behind the product, find yourself another role that you enjoy more. That'd be my short piece of advice here.
I just want to echo that, Irina. I think connectedness or purpose is really important, and you need to find your purpose. Sometimes that might be the same as the company, and they have a vision that you really align with well. Or there might be a different purpose for you to sell what you're doing, but you need to have a purpose in order to really function, I would say, at work. So that's definitely important. I would also say, as you mentioned with the remote work and the pandemic and the consequences of it, there's something to building communities these days that I think should be a top of mind focus for everyone. because we used to have the buzz of the sales floor, we used to have high fives around us and people we could talk to, and when we're suddenly working from home or from different countries or in different time zones, things can very quickly become stressful. And so how do we, as in sales, how are we able to kind of like retain some of that community feeling and that sensation of being connected to others as well, and having that social fuel in a way? Like, yeah, I think that's also a key ingredient here.
Yeah, I want to add one thing to the question, which is, it depends on your definition of tired, right? Are you really tired of the product? Are you tired of the grind, which I think Arena's talking to a little bit about too. But also, are you tired of management? Are you tired of the BS that's happening at your company, which then can demotivate you to like the product? Like, there's a lot of things that the word tired means. And it could be, look, I haven't taken a vacation in 6 months, and maybe you just are tired, need a break, like, like that happens, and I think that's something to look for at the companies you work for, is like, how do they treat this kind of stuff? We're just going to keep going through the questions from the audience because they keep coming in, and I love it, and I think it's great. This question is, and I don't know the clinical answers, but what are the different stages and degrees of burnout, and how do I detect those in my team early on? So I'm going to jump in real quick, and then I'll flow it over to everybody else, which is, one, you're not trying to detect it early on. You're trying to be as preventative as you can. So this goes back to culture, right? Do you have, Friday afternoon beer club, or, well, you could when you were in the office, or what are those things you're doing to build a culture to help prevent it? It doesn't, and you're never going to prevent all of it. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to look out for it. I think it is the obvious of when the metrics do start to go down, numbers go down, when you see people coming in late or not logging in as much, or people who used to be interactive or not as interactive. This is the same kind of stuff that they tell us as parents who have 2 teenagers, like, this is what you look for, right? Like, it's the same stuff, right? We're all humans. So I'm gonna pass it over to other folks and see what y'all think.
I can take this from an enablement perspective. I think we came in, our enablement's kind of flourishing at an interesting time here, especially when the pandemic started, because all of a sudden there was a different part to our job. How do we help to motivate sellers, right? Especially our sales force sits globally with people in APAC, with people in EMEA, we have people in the US. So for us, one of the big things was, how do we drive that camaraderie still with people all being remote and also being a bit more lonely, right? Because when you're home all day, like, if I think, when I was a BDR, we would sit on this huge desk and all be on the phone, like, that was fun. Now, if you sit at your home and make phone calls all day, that can be a little bit boring, right? And also stale really quickly. So something that we started to do is just general competitions with the sales teams, where we put different teams together, people from different regions, with prizes to win, and rewards and team meetings where they can get back together. Now things are turning back to normal. And I feel that has helped a lot just with the overall morale, like making sure we help people to connect while being more effective, right? So the competitions were around, certain metrics or KPIs that we wanted to drive as well, and give people that sense of belonging still. So I find that's always something very happy to, or healthy to look into, if you have an enablement team at hand, to ask those folks to help with that as well.
It's all really good stuff. I think culture makes a big difference. And as far as the different stages and degrees, I'm not sure if there's a one size fits all kind of degrees or stages. If there is, I'm not familiar with it. I think the way I think about detecting it early on is there are certain patterns you notice as a manager, certain situations where, hey, if there's a single person that's living alone, that's making cold calls all day, that's something that can be kind of tough on someone long term. And you can think about things within your power to do, like what Arena was saying, to kind of increase camaraderie in ways that it's possible with remote teams. And then people who, a lot of times, really, really ambitious people that see success as their only possible option. If they're setting good enough goals, they're not going to hit all of them, and they can put them in a dark place if they don't hit them. And so looking kind of for patterns where you can see burnout as a consequence, I think is important in helping those people, because a lot of times they don't really know what they're setting themselves up for. But as an SDR manager, you get to see what happens over a year with different situations, and you can kind of be preventative in that way. That's how I'd answer that.
I've got again, I'm punching some stuff into the chat with some ideas, some research. So as a leader, I think one of the great parts of this question is, well, what can I do better as a leader? And in the research that we conducted last year, one was lead with vulnerability. Talk about your own challenges. If you haven't seen what I've talked about, I talk about depression as my superpower. It's all over the internet and, all that kind of stuff. I don't expect everybody else to go tell the public, like, you're on your own journey and I respect your journey. I'm comfortable doing it. But as a leader, when you talk about your tough times, talking without turning it into the, back in the day kind of a thing, there are moments, look, every one of us on here has missed the month or missed a quarter. And all you need to say is, everybody, I've done that and it sucked and I hated it. And I want to tell your team, I want to spend a few minutes. How do you all motivate yourselves? I'm here to help you motivate, but this is what we mean by creating that safe space. And if you start with that safe space by being vulnerable yourself, then your team will eventually start to do it. And they'll feel more comfortable expressing it. And hopefully this is how they'll approach you, maybe one-on-one, and say, hey man, I'm really feeling this, or Rena, I'm stuck. I just need some advice. And you just got to be there and be present and meet them where they're at. So that's one thing, is to lead with vulnerability. In the research we did, we talked to people and we said, in the times that you felt most engaged and motivated at work, so we asked them about their best times, not their worst. What were the things that kept them going? What was good for them? And these were the top three. One, they felt supported by your leader or manager. That's the vulnerability piece. Two, they were recognized and valued by the company. And that doesn't necessarily mean the money side. It can be the money side. There's nothing wrong with it. But even getting other managers to come and say, good job, hey, great work. Telling your CEO that they need to go and say, good job to this person, right? That stuff is so simple and it's free. Doesn't cost anything. Like, these are the things that help. And you felt like you had autonomy. So there's this big piece of like, let's train people. And Arena, you know this from the enablement side of like, I need to teach, but not micromanage. And then I need to be willing to let them go and try it. And if they fail, be there to support them when they do. Right? Like, that's my interpretation of those kinds of things. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Feel free to jump on before we go to the next questions.
Yeah, I'm getting very excited here, obviously. CEO and founder of a gamification company. This is very near and dear to our hearts. We're all about motivation and how can we create this level of engagement, and in a way, gamification is a possible means to combat burnout before it happens if it's done properly. And by that I mean, one of the key ingredients to be successful with gamification is to tie into the self-determination theory. We want people who are self-determined at work to do the work that they're doing. All the research shows that they're going to be much more motivated, intrinsically motivated from within, and they will want to do better if they are self-determined. And in the workplace, there are three things that you need to experience in order to be self-determined. You need to feel autonomy. You need to feel that, I'm going to sell this product, or this is what we're doing, but you're kind of like trusted to find your way and how you can support the organization in the best possible manner. So let's say, Sam, he has lots of SDRs. You can tell them how they should work, like the process, but if you give them autonomy on how that actually is going to look like, they're going to feel more ownership towards it. Secondly, you need to see and feel mastery of your work. And by that, I feel, Richard, you talked about recognizing their efforts, not only when they book that meeting or close that deal, but for the tinier achievements along the way. that you're actually pushing harder this week than you did the last one. And I can see that, or you took time from your calendar to help me. I appreciate that. But if you can feel mastery when you're working and you can track your progress and see how you're going towards your goals, not only the end goal, but along the way, that is really helpful. And then we already talked about the connectedness or the purpose. But if you can feel all three of these, research has shown that you can really become self-determined at work, and then you will push further and be more intrinsically motivated. So I just wanted to share that part because I think it's super relevant as well, this conversation.
Sam, what do you think? Like, Sam, you've managed teams more recently, at least than me. How do you try to recognize this? Are there metrics you would pay attention to without becoming a dashboard manager that says, STFU, get back on the phone? What's your experience around that?
I don't know if KPIs, I think there might be some way to do that. I'm not sure if looking at specific KPIs is the best indicator for me. It usually is more likely something that I would identify in a one-on-one. Though I will say, like a winning team tends to be a happy team. If quotas are set, totally irrationally, I can guarantee you there's going to be a lot of unhappy people on that team. If the team feels like they're winning and the company's winning, people tend to have a lot more energy. So in a way, feeling like you're winning or accomplishing something does seem to be pretty important as far as your excitement about the role. But as far as indicators go, I think that it kind of comes out in conversations more, in my experience.
Got it. I love it. More questions coming from the audience. I'm just putting this in as a silly one in the chat. I'm just curious, informally, do you feel like your goals are set rationally? That's always a good question. So, as a business owner, who do you discuss this with, right? Because as a business owner, it can be seen as a huge sign of weakness. I'm very opinionated about this one, but I'm going to sit back and let the panelists answer this one first.
Honestly, I don't see that as a problem, and maybe it's because of my Scandinavian upbringing, but I guess we're used to having more flatter hierarchy and really level set with our colleagues, and I kind of brought that into this company, even though we're more and more American these days, and we hire a lot of people in the US. I think we've been able to kind of bridge that a bit by leading by example and being vulnerable as leaders as well. So, people know my kids, and they also know the pain of having my kids, because sometimes I have to bolt because it's just madness going off in the background, and that's life, that's normal, and that's fine. And I don't mind that you go off camera for a while because you have a screaming toddler that you need to take care of, or that your dog just barked 7 times during our 10-minute conversation. That's normal. That's fine. And by allowing other people to experience you as a leader doing that as well, I feel that you're just creating an environment or a culture where these things are dialed down. I don't want people to stress about it, at least. Stress is what's causing this in the end. It's normal, and we just need to make sure that people understand that it's fine as long as we get the work done. Now, how we do it, isn't that important, and I think that's the autonomous part of self-determination.
I know we're going to get to that. Irina, how about you?
Yeah, I think that vulnerability piece is super important to create just psychological safety with your teams as well. And that's not just necessarily, hey, I have missed quota before as well, but like, I have a bad week. Like, I'm feeling close to, this is not going to work anymore. I'm super overwhelmed, like whatever that might be. I think that honesty there, that goes a long way when you talk about those things. And it also creates a safe space for people to then come to you and speak about it as well. Because what we have to say, and that's it, you brought this up, Richard, earlier, there's a stigma around just mental health in general, right? So if I come up and I say I'm burnout, the next thought I would have is, okay, I'm not going to get the promotion. They're not going to give me more work. They don't think I can handle my job, right? Am I shooting myself in the foot here by admitting that? Like, that's probably a lot what's happening in the head. So I think by opening up that realm and saying, hey, this is okay. Like a lot of us have suffered from this. I have bad days. Like I sometimes wake up on Monday and go, how am I going to tackle my week? I think that gives people just empowers people to be honest, because, let's face it, we've all been in this shit together for 2 years, and that sucked. I'm tired. Like, I haven't left the house in January for 29 days because we had a COVID outbreak in New York City. I have literally not left the house, not even outside of on the front door. Oh. So that was for me where I'm like, I'm going to get ill. Like I need to leave the house. So, and I'm giving you an extreme here, but I'm just saying we all had our little package to carry here, so why not open it up a little bit and let people in so that we can normalize this thing, because we've all been sitting in it, no matter which role you were in the last 2 years.
But I want to give away one free tactic there to use as well, because I love when people use this against me. It always makes me smile. But it's like, if I say something or I request something, and it's probably, it could be useful, but let's face it, my plate is full. If you have that mindset, like I can't take more, yes, you need to let your manager know. You could also do that by asking like, all right, Irina, I hear your suggestion. It's amazing. I would love to do that. Here's the list of what I'm working on right now. Could you help me prioritize what I should move out? Just so, make sure that I get all done in time. And that usually, silence things a bit. So keep your to-do list close and open up and invite your manager in to help prioritize. And suddenly you're going to have a better work-life balance.
Come in and answer the question too, as a business owner, right? I do this as a business owner. It's my challenge. And I do have a couple of close friends where we know each other, and, we're not just business colleagues, we're friends. And I also have a group of friends. Some of my friends can't get my depression. Like they're like, Richard, I don't know. I will support you, but I don't know what to say. And I say, you know what? The fact that you said that is enough. That you just said you want to love me and care about me. I'm not there to try and burden on somebody. So, one, I think you need to find some people that you're comfortable sharing with. Maybe a spouse, a significant other. It could be a clergy, it could be a priest, it could be a rabbi, it could be your mom, it could be someone you trust to just say, I'm feeling this stress. It does help when you have a peer who's gone through it too. So I got it. So I really understand it. I literally just put my legit cell phone number in the chat. I'll talk to anybody about mental health. I don't care. Call me. My LinkedIn's in here somewhere too.
I'm going to try that out right now, Richard. I'm going to spam you with SMS in the next.
That's fine. Text me. It's right here. Here's my phone. So let's go into the next question though. And it's a really good one because it does feel lonely at the top when you're the founder. And depending on, I don't know what the background is of the person who asked this question, but I'm hoping you can find some resources or reach out to some people just to tell them you're feeling stressed. Next question. Can you talk more about differentiating your self-worth and your performance in sales? Right? We tie ourselves to the number, right? I'm part of an organization called Uncrush, specific that is supporting mental health and sales. That's where all this data is coming from. It's called Uncrush because we get crushed by the number and we're told to crush it all the time. So tons of resources there, but I totally agree with how do you create the work versus personal you. And it's specifically, Sam, this one's coming to you. How do you, Sam, succeed in doing that? How do you differentiate your self-worth and your performance in sales? How do you succeed in doing that? They're so easily getting intertwined. So Sam, you get to go first. We're called out.
Sure. I wouldn't say that I've always been perfect in doing this.
What? Sam, we thought you were perfect.
Well, I will say this is a hard balance, and for me, it's interesting because if you take the approach where you say, you know what, I've got this goal, and I'm going to accomplish this goal, and there's no way anyone's going to stop me. And if someone works harder, I'll just work harder than them. You can having that kind of an attitude actually can drive outcomes. If we're honest, like it actually can drive outcomes. And that's worked for me in the past. The problem is, if you say, you know what, I'm going to accomplish this, if it's the last thing I do and nothing's going to stop me, if you're setting ambitious enough goals, you just aren't going to hit those every time. And if you set yourself up to where you say, hey, like, I'm going to do this and there's no way I'm going to lose, that's the end of the world, it can put you in a really dark place. And so I've struggled with kind of the best way to use that and not use that. The best strategy I've come up with is having ambitious goals that you're excited about. At least for my own mental health, if I don't have something that I'm really excited about, that I feel good about, that I'm working toward, for me, that's something that's very important for my mental health. And so having something like that is important, but being rational about what the worst case scenario is if that doesn't work out is really important. If you're not the top SDR, what's plan B? It's actually not the end of the world. Like you're maybe 6 months behind where you were, right? So being excited, having a big goal that you're excited about, I think is really important, but understanding what plan B and C is really important. And also it makes it easier for you to take risk. If you're less afraid of just, totally failing, it can drive great outcomes too. So that's where I've settled on that.
Anybody else want to jump in on that? Otherwise, I'll steer us in a specific direction. Cool. I know we had a slide we were going to bring up too about the 6 things to do. Is that correct? So I think maybe, we've talked about this. We've spent some time trying to just engaging the group. Well, let's give them some tactics, because I see some questions coming in on the chat. Like, what are some things that we think we can do to help with these things? And I'm curious, my first question is obviously to the panelists, jump in and talk about the ones, but I would love for people in the chat to go and look at these. And if you're comfortable sharing, this is the one that means the most to me, because I don't know that they're necessarily set up in any particular order. I think we just sort of put together a pretty slide. So we recognize humans in the space where they are, but we'll dive in. And so Sam or Sindra or Irina, is one of these speak to you? And here's what it means to me when I say this at my company.
Sure, I can pick up the first one. These setting, or I'm going to jump into 5. Yeah, pick out the one that's always a big one for me. Just set up your vacations for success. So when I think all the way back, like early in my career when I was a seller, I don't think I ever put my out of office on until I was a few years in. And then one of my managers said, he's like, that's wrong. Like, go take the time, put your out of office on. And then eventually I started doing it. So that's something I can totally feel for. It's so hard to go and unplug, especially when you have a number to hit. It's so hard. I know a couple of people brought up, hey, we're taking quota away when you go on vacation, which I think is a brilliant thing to do. The problem is if you go away and you never let it go and you hop, I'm just hopping on a couple of calls, so I'm just reading some emails in the evening, you're going to come back and the battery is maybe a quarter full, but you're very quickly back to the battery being empty. And I think especially as a sales leader, that's important to model as well. When you go, assign somebody to step in while you're gone, like one of your senior people who's going to help managing the team, who's going to run your team meetings, right? If there's anything that's, huge escalation, yes, okay, have them send it over so you can deal with it if you need to. But I think the really unplugging and going away and taking time for yourself and self-care and be with your family or your friends or whatever you're doing, I think that's very, very important. Otherwise, for me, that's how you head to burnout, because you can never fill up the battery. Like, you're always going to dangle of it being a quarter or half full. So that's a big one for me.
Obviously, all 6 is important in my mind. I'm gonna say something which is a bit weird. I was a bit afraid to go on to this panel in the beginning because I was like, I'm so bad at 3, 5, and in many ways 4. That I'm like, am I the right person to be speaking here today? But the reality is that I always set too high goals, and it should be more realistic, because you're not setting yourself up for success with too high goals. So that is important to have something that excites you, like Sam says, but that is obtainable, because there is mentality. There's something that happens with the team when you're succeeding, and that's important. And the ability to really go and take the occasion and leading by example there is super important. But I'm almost never on vacation. It's just been like that for the last 15 years of my life. And I'm definitely looking forward to a time down the road where I can do more of that. But right now, that's something that I'm actually working with myself to be better at. And I feel like I definitely should be better at blocking in the calendar and like go exercise and take some time for yourself. I'm trying now to keep my family time very holy and be like, I'm going to share a meal at least with my family and kind of connect on a daily basis. And the weekends is like phone off. But I have to speak to number two right now, because I think what happened when we kind of got a bit disconnected from the office is that we have this tendency to talk, bigger numbers or about teams and team efforts or company efforts or like the bigger goals. I think the reality is that we need set time to speak to individuals and see their situation and hear what their biggest pain points are. And they're always different. And we need to find a way where we can motivate the individual and not just the team. Of course, if you can motivate both at the same time, that's the best. But the reality is that any team consists of individuals, and we need to set time to speak to them. That is important. You don't even need to have a fixed agenda, but actually see the human beings that you work with and speak to them and what's keeping you up at night and, what's happening when you're off work. Those are tremendously valuable.
Hey, one other thought I had as people were talking was, if you have a family with small children, at least I've had the experience where being at home can actually be more exhausting than work. And so it's one of those interesting things where I actually think if I were working investment banker hours, it might actually be less exhausting than, all of the things you have to manage at home. And anyway, it's a complicating factor. One thing that I did when I was a rep, when I was working really long hours, just for the benefit of my significant other, is we would align goals kind of by, we would do something that we would spend money on something we wouldn't ordinarily spend money on if we accomplished certain goals. So when I was working really, really hard, like my spouse could share in that success. And that was something that was really good for alignment. Just one kind of random tip that I wanted to add that was really important for us.
I'm going to throw in a couple of things that I've learned over the years, probably crosses several of these points. One is every person needs a personal board of directors. I need a board of directors who helps me with my investing and navigating and those kinds of things, right? Like just happens to be my mom. I have a board of directors about building my business, my good buddy, Scott Leese. We go back and forth. I have my close personal friends that I go play golf with. Well, they're my social board of directors, who are my fun people. Not that these things can't crisscross, but really having this personal board of directors. I've mentored people, and last year I made an effort to mentor people of color and specifically women. But everything I tell them, or every now and then I'll say to them, look, there's only so much I can give you. Like, I'm a white guy. Like, I can't speak to what it's like, even for Arena. I can't speak to what it's like to be a woman in the business world. I can give tons of advice, but I would encourage Arena to have a female version of someone to go ask advice for. I'd probably go to Sam with hair care products if I had hair, but that's just not going to work for me. So one, a personal board of directors. Two, help others. We all know that when we do little things for other people, we feel good. That helps us. The third one, if you're in management, one-on-ones are not always pipeline reviews. If you're only doing pipeline reviews and one-on-ones, you're doing them wrong. And so you do need to spend time to get to know them. How Richard's motivated is different than Savannah and Arena and Sindra and Sam. Like, you got to understand that, in my opinion. The other thing is the calendar thing that Sindra was talking about. I learned this from somebody else. Red, yellow, green. Anything that's green on my calendar is all revenue. Like, it is tied to a deal. It's a revenue thing. I'm cold calling, I'm prospecting, and whatever. Yellow, maybe it's the paperwork side of stuff, right? The reports and the dashboards and all that stuff. Red, anything else. Like that's it. I also, on my calendar, every day from 12 to 1 is blocked out for lunch. I can assure you I don't take a full hour lunch, and I certainly don't take it every day, but it's there for me and I get to protect my time. And that's important. I can give it to somebody else. Someone says, Richard, can I talk to you? Actually, yeah, I can do it from 12 to 12:30. So that's another piece. I actually on my calendar have Wednesdays and Fridays blocked from 2:30 to 5:30 to go play golf. I probably go once every other week, once every other month, but it's there and I've protected my time. I can put meetings on the calendar. So you can build that stuff in. And if you're going to take that approach, it's okay if you can't even start to build that stuff in until June, but start building it in now. Like you may be so slammed right now, but go ahead to June and July and August and just build it out as a repeated meeting for lunches. And eventually you'll get there. So those are, I just want to make sure people have some tactics around those things. I know we're getting close, not quite to the end. We got about 12 minutes left. So I want to see if there are any additional questions. I need to pull up the Q&A real quick.
Yeah, Richard, there was something from Amanda in there. I wanted to, I thought it was really interesting. Amanda Christensen, what you said. The third thing we had on there, hey, don't just advocate for the stuff, you got to do it yourself, right? Be it vacation and all of those things. And you said in there, if I don't see my leaders doing, this seems like a trick. That's so interesting to me that you said that. I quickly want to talk about that because I so think that's true. And I've always been at fault at that too. I'd say to people, you know, like just do your job, go to the gym in the day, like over lunch, or, you know, do whatever you need to do and walk your dog. And then I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, so I'm saying it to people, but yet I'm not really modeling the same behavior. And I totally think it is you, it just the nail on the head there. It almost feels like we just say it, but then when you do it, we're going to judge you on that, you know, you weren't around at a certain hour of the day. So I think modeling that is super important. And, you know, Sindra said it earlier, I don't care how people get that job done. If they start at 10 o'clock in the morning, they want to work later. If they want to work out in the morning, they walk the dog, they do their meditation. Like I couldn't care less, like as long as we get the stuff done, we have to get done every week. So I have in my calendar blocked out time for those things now, and people know it. And I'm like, don't schedule over it. Today at 3, I'm going to the gym, you know, because that's how I structured my day. Or, you know, in the morning, I'm doing an hour meditation and that's it. Like I can't take any meetings at that point in time. Same with just going, not just long vacations, but just taking a day, right? So last week I said, hey, on Friday, I'm taking no meetings. Like I have stuff to do, things to work through. It's like Friday is my day. Like, to, you know, Slack me if you need something, but that's it. And that's the same with sending emails and Slacks on the weekend. Like I used to always work Saturdays and Sundays. So what I would do is, because I would do stuff, send emails and messages to people on the weekend, until somebody said to me, you know, we really feel we have to respond when you do that. I'm like, well, you don't, like just respond on Monday. But there's something to be said when your boss sends you something on the weekend. Like I would respond when my boss does that. He doesn't. So I think it's the whole just being mindful of those things and setting yourself up to, you know, write that email and do a late send for Monday morning, 8 a.m. or whatever that is. So really not to bother people. I think there is something to be said about that. So thanks, Amanda, for bringing that up. So very
I agree,
good.
Irina. We have a responsibility as leaders in that sense. And I'm very glad that also Slack is come with the scheduled send. So you can actually be a bit more mindful about that. It's a good point.
Yeah, I was once this boss who sent messages on the weekends, and you know what? Stop that. Tell them to stop. Like, you know, particularly if you're in inside sales, it's like, great, I'm going to apply for overtime. So I don't know that I would tell everybody to say that. That's me being snarky. Great question from someone in the audience who said, what is imposter syndrome? Like I talk about it so much that I think everybody knows what it is. And that's not the case. I have imposter syndrome. Like it happens for me. And I want everybody on the panelists to go in and people in the chat, tell us what you think imposter syndrome is. It's that moment where I don't think I belong there, that I haven't earned the right to be there, or I'm putting myself so far out there that I feel like everything's going to be a failure. For me, because of the way my brain is wired with my own mental health issues, that happens a lot more than I think other people, or at least that's my perception. I've retrained myself, but for me, it's that sense of not feeling like I'm worthy of what's going to happen, and then I'm all of a sudden thinking about impending doom. So that for me is what imposter syndrome is, but I think everybody has their own version of it.
I think for me, this is also, close. My wife has that for sure. She has a PhD, she's a rock star, and she believes that she faked her way through it in a way. So like, when
That's
I
what I
think about,
did.
yeah,
I
I mean,
lied.
like in your mind, you think, I'm not good enough for this job or this responsibility. Why doesn't anyone else see that? Like they are going to catch on or figure it out soon enough. That is imposter syndrome. You talk yourself down in a way where it becomes really unhealthy. And then I hope that I can be that for her, but also like in terms of business, that you are a leader that can go in and really boost morale and the confidence, the self-confidence in themselves, the self-efficacy of employees. They need to believe in themselves to be successful at work. And it's really is like, this is it's weird. I don't know why it is such a big thing, but I talk to so many that feel they have this imposter syndrome. It's very common.
Sam, do you ever have it?
No, not Sam.
No.
Yeah, I think everyone has this at some points, and I mean, imposter syndrome. Actually, like a lot of definitions, I'm like not totally sure what the clear definition is, but I think of imposter syndrome is when you have like an irrational sense of not being qualified for something that you are qualified for, and it can hold a lot of people back. A lot of people are more qualified for things than they think.
Yeah, I
and a
keep
lot of
telling
people,
people, you got the job. Like Sam hired you, right? It's okay to be, you're new, and I get it, and you're early in your career, and I understand you don't want to make mistakes, but Sam sees something in you, right? And I do know Sam well enough that I could say, Sam would talk to you if you were concerned about this. Like Sam would, like, he'd be willing for you to come and say, hey, I know you hired me, thank you. I'm still feeling lost. You don't have to say like you feel like an imposter. You can say, I'm feeling lost, or something's not making sense to me. Right. And I think those are easy ways to let yourself go ask for help, so that you're not sending up the signal of like, oh my God, which if you need to send that signal, you should anyway. So,
yep.
So what else? Anything else coming from folks? I know we're almost at the end, and it's been super fun, but I want to make sure that we get to everyone on the panel or from the audience and see if there's anything else we want to talk about regarding any of these things.
While we wait, I can give my little female perspective on imposter.
Please, we haven't even talked about it. Oh my gosh.
I write about that a lot, and I've also written about it in my book and interviewed a lot of women, particularly on this topic. It's obviously not just a woman thing. We just heard that everybody is suffering from it, but I think for us, it's almost like a different degree. And that's pretty obvious because we have way less women in leadership and executive positions than we have men. And there's something to be said about that, because there is a confidence gap between the two, and imposter syndrome plays into that. So it likely affects us in different ways and affects us a little bit more than it, might overall our male counterparts. I once did a workshop, and it was all about the negative versus positive self-talk, right? How you look in the mirror in the morning and you tell yourself you're so awesome. And I'm like, that stuff doesn't work. Like it, in my earlier careers, that was my tactic. And I was always looking for what's the magical connection to get yourself out of it. Because usually once a year I get like a slur of imposter syndrome. Right? It's just, every year it just happens. And the key for me, like the magical piece there, is you can tell yourself whatever you want. That doesn't mean that it gets you out of the hole. If you don't feel it, that's the negative piece that comes in. Like if you feel that you are not in the right spot, but you look in the mirror and you go, high five, Irina, you can do this all day. It's not going to happen. Like it's not going to change you. There's a total connection between here and here. And if you don't get those two on the same page, you're stuck in it. and it's super tough to get out. So where we can help as leaders as well is to tell people that they're qualified for the job and give them the feeling that they are, right? So it's action and speaking, but it's very easy to do that when you're in that outside position, because while you're in it, it's very tough for me to change my sentiment about myself. It's probably one of the hardest things to do. So that would be my little tip. Like, it's not just brain, it's also hard. Like, if you don't feel it, it's it's a tough one to step away from.
Really good points there, powerful. One of the things that we've had success with at Sales Screen in this case is actually to kind of like have peer-to-peer recognition. We have a system for that. So, inside Sales Screen, people can give kudos or endorsements to each other. And we really take those and we put them on a pedestal. We talk about them on the town hall, and we reference them. We push them into Slack. We make it visible for everyone to see, because I don't know if this is, I don't have research or stats on this, but I just feel colleagues are better at giving this type of helping and building each other up than managers are to their employees for some reason. But colleagues are really exceptional at seeing those small things that you do in everyday work that's just phenomenal and has such an impact, and just capturing the essence of that. So if you have like a system or a way to kind of like broadcast peer-to-peer recognition, that usually has a tremendous impact as well on the culture of like boosting each other up, and have like this culture of appreciation. I think that really does help combat imposter syndromes many times.
I love that.
I totally agree. And by the way, the data does support you. It said the number two thing. One was being felt supported by leader and management. That's what, when you were at peak performance, one was support there. The other was being recognized and valued by your company. That doesn't necessarily mean the executive. I think that means the peers, that you have that kind of environment and that kind of culture. So I think you've nailed it on that. I know we got about 1 minute left. I want to, obviously thank Sales Hacker for having this conversation, Sandra, Irina, and Sam for being here. Sales Screen, thank you so much for supporting such an important conversation and sharing it and bringing it to the forefront, because it really, really matters. I put all of our links into the on LinkedIn to connect if you would like to. I'm happy to send this report to anybody. I don't want to send it in the chat because it's not my event, so it's a Sales Screen event, but happy to send
fine. Send it, Richard. That's totally fine. Please send. If it's relevant to the topic, feel free to share it in the chat.
Okay, I'll do it real quick. Anyway, I just want to say thank you to everybody, and thank you to everybody who showed up to attend this. Like, we know that you've got a lot of things going on today. It's not an easy topic to talk about, and we know that you coming in, even if you just sat and listened and watched, that's a good step, and we appreciate that and appreciate all of you for that. So I think that'll end it in a second. I'm going to post this report in there as soon as I find it, but if folks want to jam, they can. So give me 1 second. Sorry for the delay on that. Multiple screens.
There is another Q&A, or there is another question in
Let's do it.
Q&A box. And it's, should inside sales reps have set hours they work each day, or would you recommend an open schedule? Does anybody have any thoughts on that before we wrap up? As Richard sends that
resident
link.
SDR expert jamming on that one.
My opinion on that is that it should be different every day. Just because your schedule's gonna be different every day. Choose it the night before. If you box yourself into certain things every hour, you're going to be calling the same people, and it's going to be inflexible with your other.
And you may have life, to Sam's point earlier, if you got kids, or Irina's point of like, oh my God, I'm bouncing off the walls being stuck in New York City. Like, you may need at 2 o'clock to do nothing, because that's just the way it is, right? Like, it's, I think flexibility matters. And I think that the real answer for me is do what you need to do to be successful. Don't go 12 hours a day on a grind. I will pay attention to that. But if you need to do something and have a siesta in the middle of the day, because that's you, if you're hitting the numbers, I don't know that Sam, I mean, kind of cares, but I don't know that it's, if you're hitting your numbers, it's not going to really, it's not where he's going to be looking, in my opinion. I was able to share that to everybody. So thank you all for coming. If you're interested in the report or you want to connect with me, feel free. I know everybody else here would love to connect with you. And again, thanks everybody for joining us on a very important topic. Be healthy, please.